What's up, friends? I was trying to be Peter McKinnon, and it just didn't land right, did it? I know what this needs. Hang on. What's up, friends? Welcome back. It is a joy to see all of your bright and shining faces. Go ahead and hit that like button. Smash it if you are so inclined. See, the key to parodying Pete is caffeine. What's up, friends? Welcome to Drop Into Dr. Awesome. I am Dr. Awesome, and we're going to talk about creating an audio visualizer. So why are we talking about audio visualizers? Well, you know, in the world today, it has never been easier to create video content, to interview people who you aren't in the same room with. Now, this has always been possible through things like telephones and stuff like that, but now there's all kinds of video options. I mean, you've got Zoom and Skype and GoToMeeting and FaceTime and all of those things. But, you know, every once in a while, you do wind up with something that is questionable, like this. What's up, guys? We're going to talk about excitation transference theory. We're not going to actually talk about excitation transference theory because I don't know that I keep a straight face long enough to actually make that joke land. But you could wind up getting somebody who was a little more coherent, but still had some visual red flags. And so what we begin to see in the early 2000s is a shift from episodic storytelling to serialized storytelling in dramatic television, which is really, really interesting. Now, even if I were saying something as reasonable as that, there are still a few visual red flags here. Now, what an audio visualizer is going to allow you to do is remove all of those undesirable video elements, those things that make your talent seem unprofessional or uncredible, and it's going to enable you to still have a visually dynamic shot on screen, just that you have a little more control over. So let's go ahead and jump into After Effects and we'll make this happen. Alright, so here we are in After Effects. Let's go ahead and create a new composition. We'll call it Visualizer. And let's look at a couple other things here. I like to have my width at 2560 and height at 1440. You could work in 1920 by 1080. I just like having the larger image size. We come down here. We want to make sure that our frame rate is the same as whatever we've shot the rest of our video with. So in my case, it's 2397. And then we also want to make sure that the duration of this composition we're creating is something close to that of the audio we're going to be working with. So I know that my audio is about 11 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and create a composition duration of 12 seconds here, and then hit OK. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and create a new solid to work with. So I'm going to right-click down here in this part of the window here. New, solid. Make sure it's the same width and height as the composition itself. We're going to call this background. And then if you wanted to change the color to black or whatever else you wanted to work with, you just click on this little window here, and you select whatever you're going to work with. And then hit OK. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to apply an effect to this background layer. So we come over here into our window over here. You can see under Effects and Presets, we've got Generate. And if you click on Generate, one of the first options you'll see is Audio Spectrum. Now we're going to click and drag that onto our background layer, and you'll see these little lines appear. Now at the moment nothing's happening because we don't have any audio, so we want to go ahead and import our audio from our interview. So I'm going to come into my Finder here, and you can see I've actually separated the audio out from the video and made it an MP3. You don't have to do this. You could just bring the whole video with the audio attached directly into After Effects. I just like to separate it because it makes the file size smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag that into my workspace here, and if I hit play, what you'll see happen is you'll hear the audio, but you won't actually see any change in this window here. And so what we begin to see in the early 2000s is So we need to make a couple of changes to our background layers. Let's go ahead and make sure that's what we've got selected. And then we're going to check this box right here that says Composite on Original. And then we're going to come up here and where it says Audio Layer, we're going to make sure that we're changing this from background to serialized story. And now if we go ahead and play this, watch what happens. And so what we begin to see in the early 2000s is a shift. Now this is working, but it is a little boring, so we're going to make a couple of tweaks here. So if we come back over here into our Effect Controls window, again making sure the background layer is selected, you can see we've got some options here for this visualizer. The first thing that I like to do is I like to go ahead and change the maximum height of my frequency. I like to move that up to like 6,000 just to give a lot of bounce in that frequency visualization. So you can already see without even playing this, we've got a lot more going on here. So if I bring this back and go ahead and hit play. And so what we begin to see in the early 2000s is a shift from episode. And that's pretty nice. Now there are some other things you could play with here. You can notice you've got different colors here you can play with. So I don't really like the pink, so I'm going to go ahead and go with, I'm going to make my interior color black. And my outside color, exterior color, I'm going to make that yellow. Something like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and change the thickness from 3 to 12. Now what that does is it creates this little bar right here. And so what we begin to see in the early 2000s is a shift from episode. I actually don't like the black. We're going to change that to... There we go. I was actually in gray instead of black. Alright. And so what we begin to see in the early 2000s... I like that a lot, actually. Now, one other thing we could do is if you come down here where it says Display Options, you can see right now we're in digital. If I change this to analog lines, that creates sort of the heart monitor look. And so what we begin to... You could also change this to analog dots, which is kind of interesting. To see in the early 2000s... Personally, though, I like to use the digital visualizer. You could also, it says side options, so A is above the line and B is below the line. If I change this to just side A, you can see that my bottom lines go away, and if I change it to side B, a shift from the top lines go away. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on both side A and B, and then I'm going to go ahead, this actually is going to work for me just fine, so I'm going to come up here to File, and Export, Add to Render Queue. And then once we're here, I'm actually fine with the name being Visualizer. That's totally great. I am going to go ahead and click on that just to make sure it's going to the right place. It is going to my serialized folder. If it didn't go where you want it to go, you just click that name right there and navigate through your Finder window as you would. This is already going where I want it to go, so I'm going to hit Save and Render. And then once this renders out, I will see you in Premiere Pro for just a few final touches. Alright, so here we are in Premiere, and you can see that I've created an audio visualizer sequence as well as a visualizer bin for any extra media that we're going to put in here. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and get our visualizer that we've created into Premiere. So I'm going to go ahead and come into my Finder here, and I'm just going to drag this visualizer into the project window here. And then once that happens, I'm going to go ahead and click and drag it out on the timeline. I'm going to leave my existing settings. You can see that this visualizer we've created is actually larger than the actual viewing space here. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click on that and set to frame size. Let's just go ahead and shrink that down. And let's go ahead and give that a play and see what it looks like. And so what we begin to see in the early 2000s is a... Not too bad, but we do want to go ahead and add in just one more touch here to make this a little more polished looking. What that's going to be is an image of the person speaking. So I've actually got saved already in my Finder here a picture of myself. Go ahead and just drag that into the bin with the visualizer. And then what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and drag that out on top of the visualizer on the timeline. Now, obviously, we don't want to cover up our visualizer with this image, so first thing we're going to do is go ahead and add a layer mask to this, sort of crop that in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and use this elliptical mask here. Whoops. I want to make sure you're applying it to the correct layer. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of encompass my head here with this mask. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and shrink down the scale of this entire layer, just like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and, using the position tool here, I'm going to go ahead and just move this right on up into this top right corner, just so we have some visual representation of who is actually speaking here. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And so what we begin to see in the early 2000s is a shift. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now, obviously, all of these parameter controls that I set in After Effects for this visualizer, you could actually tweak and make them your own. I was just kind of burning through it to make sure you knew what you needed to do to sort of get this done. Once you've got it in Premiere, it's just like any other media source. You can copy and paste it and move it and do whatever you need to with it, and it's just one more thing to work with. You see, with just a few steps, we've taken something that was uncredible, unprofessional, and really unusable, and we've turned it into something that we can actually put into a documentary. And that, friends, is the purpose and the benefit of audio visualizers. Keep shooting, friends.